If the European Union is not fully sovereign, how does it have the authority to negotiate and sign a trade deal with India? Has the US exerted any indirect influence in this process? So I keep saying that the EU nations aren't really sovereign. Uh, they don't have territorial sovereignty, right? Because they don't control their borders. They don't control who comes in, who goes out, right? They don't have economic or financial sovereignty because none of them have their own currency. They depend on the EU, on the euro, right? None of them controls the EU, so they don't have financial sovereignty. And those of them who are members of NATO don't even have military sovereignty because from time to time their military or parts of their military come under foreign control. So clearly, the EU nations are not sovereign entities, but the European Union as a whole is sovereign. So none of the nations is sovereign, but the EU as a whole is a sovereign entity. It controls its territory. It controls who comes in or goes out of the Schengen area through visas and all that enforcement. It controls its economy. It has its own currency, the euro. And from the military perspective, let's keep that out of the thing because the EU doesn't really have a proper military of its own. It depends on NATO and so on. But apart from that, from the economic perspective, it is economically sovereign. So it is economically sovereign. And that's why it has the authority to negotiate on its own a trade deal with India and sign this said trade deal. So that's the situation. It's not like the EU is non-sovereign. The individual nations that make up the European Union, those aren't sovereign. The EU is indeed economically or financially sovereign, legislatively sovereign, and territorially sovereign. The military issue is a whole different story. That is not the thing we're discussing here. Has the US exerted any indirect influence in the process? Well, I suppose the US has not done that thus far, but they may try and interfere. That's always a possibility going forward.